These two guys have Minnesota sports flowing in their veins. Mackie and Judd on SKOR North and SKORNorth.com.
He is Darren Doogie Wolfson from the 5 Eyewitness News Sports Department, here with some scoops on this Tuesday. Doogie, we have yet to talk to you, welcome to the show, about the Mike Zimmer story that Mark Craig did for the Star Tribune and StarTribune.com over the weekend. We'd love to peel back some layers.
Well, hello, boys. Appreciate you having me, as always. So I recall when Mike Zimmer was fired, going back multiple years, in our TV office, Joe Schmidt, admittedly, Joe Schmidt had the best relationship. Sure, Zim and I were okay. Chris Long and Zim were okay. But Joe went down to the ranch, right? You get the invite to the ranch in Kentucky. You spend multiple days in Kentucky. Like, you have that bond with Zim. So Schmidt tried multiple times to land an interview with Zim immediately after he was fired. Tried for 1 month. Zim texted back multiple times, hey, I'd love to do it, but I feel like I will say something I'll live to regret. Now let's fast forward 2 years. Credit to Mark Craig, who had that outstanding relationship with Zim. But at this point, Zim just didn't give a bleep. I just don't know. Hey, I appreciate his candor, right? We oftentimes feel like these athletes, these coaches are so scripted. So I appreciate his ability to unplug, to really tell us how he feels. But to me, what sums it up, when you've burned the bridge with Terrence Newman, like I texted with Terrence a couple weeks ago. I think this is why Terrence said he didn't want to do an interview with me. When my theme was, hey, the Vikings signed Gilmore, I just want to talk to you about how you play cornerback at a pretty high level into your mid-30s. But I feel like Terrence probably thought I would turn a corner on his fractured relationship with Zim. But like Zim and Newman are so close. And for them to not have spoken in a really long time now, that to me tells me all I need to know.
I thought of something else too. And so we did a PD episode on Sunday about this, but since then I thought of one important thing too, because it was like, there were people in the Vikings locker room asking the same question, like, why now? It's way after the fact. But I believe if you look it up, he got paid through last year.
It's a great point.
So what I thought of was he didn't want to, I'm sure his contract said, you can't rip the crap out of our team.
Yeah.
So I think this came down to the financials.
Excellent point. Yes.
Now I do think it's still odd because it's so long ago and like he's ripping Paul Allen and stuff. I mean, it's just like, dude, just don't bother. But anyway, I think it was the financials.
When you think Paul Allen is being too negative about your coaching in the Vikings, you've lost everyone at that point, I feel like, if you're Mike Zimmer.
Let's just say that story, those quotes were a talker in the Vikings locker room on Monday. One in particular being Harrison Smith. I think Harrison was even surprised by some of the things he heard from that story. I know Harrison knew a lot of that, but I don't know, like, for example, if Harrison actually knew that PA and Zimmer had a fractured relationship.
I can confirm he did not, because I talked to him and he's like, I didn't know about the PA thing, and I'm like, the horse. He goes, oh, I knew about that. I just didn't know Zim bought him out. So
God. And I will say, I texted the story to two former Vikings players who you guys know very, very well, Alex Boone and Jeremiah Searles, and they both played for Zimmer for at least a year or two. And they both were like, this can't be real. Like, is this like a fake story? There's even them knowing how crazy Mike Zimmer was and how cantankerous he was, couldn't believe that 2.5 years later, he would come out and say all these things. The Chris Boyd thing is my favorite. And by the way, for anyone that maybe you had a long holiday weekend, Judd and I did an hour-long recap, quote by quote, on Purple Daily for like the full breakdown of this. You can check it out. But on players criticizing him, Doogie, you brought up Terrence Newman. And Terrence Newman talked to Tyler Dunn of Go Long a couple years ago and detailed what he called a toxic atmosphere in Zimmer's final days. Zimmer said, that one hurt me bad. Terrence was like my son. I called Bill Parcells about that one. And then I called Terrence. And Terrence said, well, that's how I felt. I felt it was toxic. And Zimmer said, instead of Zimmer then pausing, reflecting and thinking, wow, a guy that I think is my son basically in football thinks that I have overseen a toxic atmosphere. Maybe this is a time for some reflection. Zimmer said, quote, "Look, we're done, Terrence. Never talking to you again." And then he's asked about, apparently Chris Boyd said something, I don't know. He was quoted a couple years ago.
Podcast.
A podcast? Okay. Yeah. And yes. Mike Zimmer said, Chris Boyd, he says something about me. I'm like, dude, you had more special teams penalties than anyone I can remember. And Chris Boyd goes on his Instagram and he's like, Coach Zim, I love you, man. Like, I didn't talk crap about you. I still love you, even though you shredded me in the Star Tribune.
Well, Kellen Mond, too.
Kellen Mond?
The Mond thing's the worst. I mean, just a completely out of nowhere. The man, I don't think, is playing football, Darren, and he just gets absolutely destroyed by a guy who hated him from the day he arrived.
And this is the main theme that I picked up, which is Zimmer is not wrong. If you tabulated the things that he's wrong about, he's more right than wrong, I think, in the things that he's evaluating. But, bro, you are the head coach of a 53-man roster. And it's like he looks at Kellen Mond as not being part of his jurisdiction. That who's this guy over here? This guy sucks. Like, you're the head coach. It's your job to develop and cook the groceries that Rick Spielman bought you. But somewhere along the line, after the Bridgewater injury and the Kirk Cousins signing and then the 2021 draft, these dominoes fell. And Zimmer decided, bleep this. I don't trust anyone. And, it was going to end one way or the other. But, yeah, any other just thoughts from the quotes in the article that came out, Dukes?
Well, I still feel like he is the third best coach. Not even close. If you want to argue Chili, fine. But to me, third best coach in Vikings history. It's just unfortunate. It's sort of wrapping up or ending in this fashion. I will tell you on Kellen Mond, Hugh Jackson is one of Zim's guys. They go way back. Hugh Jackson, the former Browns coach, did a bunch of pre-draft work with Kellen. Hugh and Zim had a few conversations. So I just don't know why Zim was all over the place on Mond, because Hugh Jackson, who Zim trusts, that's one of Zim's guys, said, hey, there's something there. Yes, he needs to be coached up, but hey, I believe in this guy. I've been spending day upon day upon day with him. This is, February, March, heading into that April draft. Hey, I believe in this guy. And my understanding was Zim was like, okay, bring it on, right? After the pick, he's like, okay, Hugh, I trust you, but something changed. And you think about the last couple of weeks, Brian Flores doing some self-reflection, right? A couple of weeks ago, the Tua comments really hurt him. You think about the comments Flores offered up. Now you think about Zim. Now, do I have this right, too, by the way, that, okay, so Mark Craig goes out to Oxnard, California. That's where the Cowboys hold training camp. They're at a Residence Inn. That in the room was Jerry Jones and Troy Aikman in the room.
Aikman was in the
Jerry
room.
Jones in there?
Well, that's what I'm asking.
Aikman was there.
Aikman was in the room.
And he was sitting there nodding the whole time. It sounded like a dream. I was talking to my buddy, and I looked on the bed, and Troy, and I asked Mark at practice Monday, I'm like, what was Aikman doing there? He's like, I got no clue. I just threw it in the story.
Wait, so he was doing a one-on-one with Zimmer, right?
I think it was McCarthy at that point. I think he talked to Mike McCarthy.
Got it. Okay.
Those quotes were the McCarthy quotes, and Aikman was there, but it was this very to Darren's point, this very arbitrary, weird, you're just nodding.
I love how Aikman's always lurking in Cowboys land. Just
put the quarter in the machine if you're Mark Craig. Seriously, excellent work, right? That's what we do. We cultivate these relationships where you hope to get that brutal at times honesty, but certainly that honesty. So unreal work by Mark, but I'm still trying to figure out days later what Zim was hoping to accomplish.
Yeah. Well, I think he was, I think in many ways, even going back to his coaching tenure with the Vikings, what he's hoping to accomplish is a short-term temper tantrum that makes him feel good in the moment and exonerates him from blame or criticism. And then in the end, he winds up really hurting himself. It's like, okay, so you hated the 2021 draft. Well, A, there was probably a reason why Rick Spielman didn't include you in the lead up to the draft process. I'd love to hear Rick Spielman's side of this, right? And B, okay, well, here are your players. And it's from the minute they were drafted, he decided, I want nothing to do with any of these guys. I'm not going to put any work into developing them. I'm not even going to look at Kellen Mond or make eye contact. So, well, he's definitely not getting another head coaching job outside of Dallas. I could see with the way Jerry Jones runs things, if Mike McCarthy gets fired, I could see that angle. But even Zimmer was asked about this by Mark Craig. Do you think you would ever get another head coaching job? Would you want one? And he said, guys with worse records than me have gotten second chances, but I don't see it happening because of my age. And now teams also want whoever can coach the quarterback. It is what it is. Yes.
Well, I mean, he's
correct.
right about that.
Yep.
He's not wrong on that front.
Well, there's that little thing about the most important position in all of sports. I guess you have to actually have meetings with those guys if you want these head coaching jobs. It's ridiculous. I know, right?
Oh, just classic. I'll tell you what, though. I mean, you talk to certain guys, whether it's an Anthony Barr and Eric Kendricks, even Dalvin Cook reuniting. I mean, Dalvin was yearning for a job, right? And Dallas came calling. But, some of his former players to this day will, go to their grave for Mike. So Mike did endear himself to enough individuals. So I'm just saying, this was weird, but there are some people that will back Mike Zimmer like you wouldn't believe. Mike
was a really good coach from 2014 to the day Kirk got here. That changed him. So Dukes, Sunday against the Giants, we both stood and watched practice yesterday, but I'm going to allow you give us the potential good news and bad news on the wide receiver front.
Well, the good news would be Jordan Addison, in our 15 minutes of being able to watch, was moving around. And going back to the August 14th injury, that first day of joint practices in suburban Cleveland against the Browns, left ankle, I was always led to believe it would be 2 to 3 weeks. This would be week 3. Not surprised he's on the field. I fully expect him to be on the injury report, that first injury report that is released on Wednesday. The question is he a limited participant? Perhaps even a full participant? Or will he not practice? I think he'll do something.
Yeah.
The question to me always has been, going back to August 15th, when I started to gather background on this injury, it was never, hey, will he play on September 8th against the Giants? It's always been, to me, the number one question, how effective can he be? Mm-hmm. But I fully expect him to play on Sunday. The bad news is Jalen Naylor was working off to the side. I don't have an update on Jalen's status. I will tell you, though, A, encouraging that he was out there, even off to the side. B, I had a nice conversation Monday in the locker room with Brandon Powell. And Brandon told me, hey, my main focus is punt returning. Because I tried to go down the rabbit hole of, hey, you were used in many different ways on offense last year. Will we see that, at least some of that, starting on Sunday? And he said, hey, I'm just telling you, my main focus is helping on special teams. So if Brandon was going to be a big part of the offensive game plan, at least in his mind on Sunday, I think he would have at least opened the door a little bit with me. So that just leads me to think that Jalen Naylor will be wide receiver number 3 on Sunday.
Jaren Hall, short-lived Vikings tenure. He had a decision to go back to the Vikings practice squad or to the Seattle Seahawks practice squad. He chose the Seahawks. Any information or thoughts on the Jaren Hall era coming to an end in Minnesota, Doogie?
So when I was last on with you guys last Thursday morning, I said, hey, the Vikings want him back in the practice squad. Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah met with us later that day, confirmed that, hey, we want Jaren back. You correspond with people close to Jaren. They will confirm that as of Monday morning, Jaren had a decision to make. Seattle or stay with the Vikings. The Vikings made an offer. They wanted him back on the practice squad. He ultimately chose Seattle for a few reasons. Mainly, he's the clear-cut number 3 quarterback there. There is no competition for that spot. He also is aware that Seattle had a good amount of pre-draft interest a year ago. Seattle just never had the opportunity to draft him. If you go back and look at how that 5th round, even that day 3, shook out, it just didn't work out. And also Seattle had at least a little bit of dialogue with the Vikings this offseason about trading for Jaren. Now, hey, the easy comeback, a lot of people watching, listening to this will say, well, crap, if Seattle wanted to trade for Jaren Hall in June or July, why didn't the Vikings take whatever they could have gotten? Well, because they wanted to see training camp play out. Was there a chance for him to stick? Like, the Vikings weren't ready to cut the cord then. Like, I've gotten the same blowback on Lewis Seen. Like, I firmly believe there was some dialogue on a Lewis Seen trade going back to last week. But when you think about his contract, teams knowing that the Vikings were not going to keep him, you weren't going to assume the contract. You were not willing to give up even a conditional late round pick. And so it just never came to fruition. But like, the Eagles absolutely had some trade interest in Lewis Seen. Mm-hmm. And hey, maybe the Eagles are slightly kicking themselves right now because he didn't choose to sign with the Eagles. Chose ultimately to sign with the Buffalo Bills after initially committing to the New York Jets. But the Bills recruited him hard, sold him on going to Buffalo. But I just know on Jaren, like, Seattle has shown a good amount of interest. And so if you're Jaren, do you come back here to be quarterback number 4, or did it make logical sense to head to Seattle to be quarterback 3? He chose Seattle.
In Seen's case, I think also, if I'm not mistaken, the Bills' secondary coach was his coach at Georgia. So it's a position coach thing too.
Yes.
Yes. Hey, Dukes, there was something loosely involving Kevin O'Connell that came out last week that piqued my curiosity, and it's this. Mike McDaniel agreed to a contract extension. So he came in 22 with Kevin as coach of the Dolphins. Same exact contract through 25. He got a contract extension through 2028 last week that syncs up with Tua's contract. So they are married. Now, I know that Tua's played. He's, more proven now. But do we think that this moves the needle at all on what a contract extension for O'Connell is going to look like? And, I mean, it would make sense to sync him up with McCarthy, considering I think the relationship eventually is going to be very similar in that they're probably both going to determine each other's fates, and therefore it makes some sense to give them both the same exact leash.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I think it's eventually coming. Now, I've thought how you've thought right after I saw the McDaniel extension. Also keep in mind, Mike McDaniel record, Kevin O'Connell record, Same record, right? So you talk about the same, term on the initial contract from 22. They also, correct me if I'm wrong, have the same exact record. And so you look at it and say, okay, if Mike gets an extension, KOC should be in line for an extension. Yep. So you think about Kevin's representation, Trace Armstrong, others, certainly I have tried to find out. I don't have the ultimate answer. I'm just telling you, my sense is, the Andrew Millers of the world, others over in Egan, they think the world of Kevin. I just think Kevin is going to be here for a while. And so I think it's eventually coming. And you look at the history of the Wilfs, it's not like they're reluctant to give a contract extension. Then if they need to fire somebody, right? I mean, think about Zim.
Childress.
The aforementioned Zim, Childress, right? So the Wilfs are willing to give an extension. Then if they have to, cut the cord. I'm just telling you, everything I can gather, like, I'm not there. Maybe eventually on Kwesi. I'm just not there yet on Kwesi. But on Kevin, I am firmly convinced he has so many fans in Egan that regardless of how this year goes, with pretty high expectations, but if it goes sideways a little bit, I still think Kevin ultimately gets that contract extension.
We'll get to some more stuff here in Doogie's Scoop Bag, including Twins drama with their franchise player. But Dex, if you're looking to make football watching more fun, now that it's officially football season here, tell the audience where they should go.
Absolutely. You should go to Underdog Fantasy, where you can right now get a no-sweat token. So you see that little Travis Kelce that I'm flashing on the screen for our YouTube audience. He just has to get a yard. All right, all the Swifties willing him to 1 yard. Can we do that? Boom. All right, first pick 'em is there. And then how about some touchdowns?
Aaron Rodgers couldn't quite clear the bar week 1 last year, so be careful. Be careful.
That's true. This is true. But if you want to go lower on that, you could also do that. I wouldn't do that, but you can give a higher to Travis Kelce, and then with the Thursday night football game, let's also have some touchdowns for Lamar Jackson, Isaiah Pacheco. You can join Underdog Fantasy by using promo code SKOR. Users receive a 50% deposit match plus up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Go download the Underdog Fantasy app and get in on the fun and send us all of those great options you're picking at Underdog Fantasy.
Real quick, have you guys seen, we'll get into just the rest of Doogie's Scoop Bag, but the controversy on Florida State social media where that Florida State fan put
Oh,
out
yes.
like on Twitter. He's like,
Yeah,
he's
he has
like,
to
if,
eat food.
if Florida State loses to Boston College,
Yeah.
I will
Grab that spoon.
I will I will
I
fill
wanna
a
see
cup
it.
with poop and eat it with He has deleted all of his
Good.
social media.
Oh!
And the world is searching for this man to hold him accountable to eat said poop out of
No.
said cup.
I
Yes,
know.
no. There's a
He did the right thing. Just go away.
Deleted his footprint.
Yeah, go.
Witness protection. No one's ever going to find him.
Amen.
I mean, did he make that declaration after he watched Florida State play Georgia Tech?
Yeah, I think so. Between weeks 1 and weeks 2.
Wow.
Yeah.
Then knowing that
Stand by
Bill
his team.
O'Brien, pretty darn capable coach, took over the BC program, that was one heck of a bold declaration. Wow.
Yeah. Hey, okay. I actually have I'm going to ask you a Gopher question here. Jubb was ranting about Gopher football. We'll get to the Royce Lewis thing, but the Gophers are projected to have a bad season in a loaded Big Ten. I mean, there's like 5 top 10 teams. Every other Big Ten team won in week 1 except for the Gophers.
Although how many played Power 4 opponents?
Agreed.
But go ahead.
Is there anything, if they have a bad season, like, are we talking about PJ Fleck's job security officially at the end of this season in any capacity, do you think?
We are not. So coming next year, Phil, is revenue sharing. The University of Minnesota has to give out approximately $20 to $22 million to student athletes. Where exactly is that $20 to $22 million coming from? Then you think about the possibility of firing your football coach. What's the buyout? I don't have the terms in front of me, but we're talking 7 figures, maybe even a healthy 7 figures.
Mm-hmm.
So you're firing PJ Fleck. Then you're bringing in some other coach, paying that coach what? $5-ish million a year? Let's say it's Jimbo Fisher. You want Jimbo Fisher. Okay? We can make a case, compelling case. Jimbo Fisher, upgrade over PJ Fleck. You bring in Jimbo Fisher. What are you paying Jimbo Fisher? $5 to $7 million a year? Where exactly are they getting all this money? If you're Ohio State, if Ryan Day loses to Michigan again, if they lose in the first round of the playoffs, although I think Ohio State, maybe it's week 1, overreaction, bias, whatever, but Ohio State looks really good. But like if Ohio State wants to fire Ryan Day and bring in Mike Vrabel or Jimbo or somebody else, Ohio State probably has those funds. The Gophers don't have those funds, Phil. So no, I'm just telling you. Plus the synergy with Mark Coyle, you think about that AD head coach relationship. Heck, look at the 18 teams in the Big Ten. There's not an AD and coach that have been together longer than Mark Coyle and PJ Fleck. I was with Mark Coyle for a bit last week, or maybe it was like 10 days ago, whatever it was, but just the way he gushes. I mean, I've heard it before, but in the moment, the way he gushes about Fleck, I'm just telling you, they could win 4 or 5 games, underachieve this year, although what's the Vegas over-under, 5.5?
Mm-hmm.
But they could go under. They could win 5, finish 5-7, miss out on a bowl game, or maybe they get lucky, get to a bowl game based on academics again, play a Bowling Green again, pretend you have some momentum heading into the next season, which I've never bought. I don't even think people at the U, maybe some.
I mean,
PJ
PJ
do, a lot of
is
people
5-0.
don't.
He's 5-0 in bowl games.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, absolutely. But I'm just telling you, no, like PJ is not in trouble. Put it this way: if the Gophers have a new coach next season, it's because PJ. There are like 3 or 4 jobs. I'm positive. If PJ could land those jobs, he'd be gone. But I don't think there's a marriage there that's going to happen. And so, I'm just telling you, if by chance we see a new football coach next year, it's because PJ Fleck got another job, not because he's been fired. There's
you won't
nothing to
eat
worry about
anything.
if you're PJ Fleck here at Minnesota.
If that happens, you're not going to eat anything, right? You're good on that, Dukes?
Yeah. Put your money where your mouth is, Dukes.
So you want me to offer up eating poop if
Scooby,
somehow lands
dog poop.
the Notre Dame job?
Can we
if
stop?
Marcus Freeman gets an NFL job, leaves South Bend, PJ ends up at Notre Dame. So of all the coaches Notre Dame could hire, they ultimately choose.
Dude, my guy Marcus Freeman, stock on the rise after week 1. Holy cow!
Super impressive. Did I tell you I had a chance to bond with him briefly, but I had a nice conversation with him for a few minutes at Joe Alt's draft party back in April.
Yeah.
I just came away from that conversation so impressed. Just really, really good guy and smooth. I like him.
So the question on Fleck, though, is this, and my rant was that of all the sports I watch in this town, the Gophers' offense is the biggest single eyesore I've seen. What has happened there? Like, you're running on 3rd and 9. You're being a moron. Like, this guy was at one time heralded as an offensive mind, and then, rightfully asked about that play, he gets defensive. You're in the red zone. You're at home. It's 3rd down and 9. If you recruited a quarterback that you don't think can throw a ball there, then you're not doing a good job. But furthermore, if you do think he can throw the ball and you still elect to run, like, this is my problem, is schematically, this is not acceptable. It is an eyesore. It's terrible.
Well, and you choose to run with your best wide receiver, Daniel Jackson, on the bench. You talk about a tell.
Yeah, good point.
Like, think about that tell.
Good point.
3rd and goal from the 9. Your best receiver comes out of the game. Heck yeah, you were running the ball. So I'm with you. Now, to me, the best that Max Brosmer looked was that last drive, up tempo.
Yeah.
I would hope that they figure out some ways to incorporate that a bit more.
Yep.
I think that plays to his strengths as much as anything. I don't think Thursday was any sort of indictment or, massive fault of Max Brosmer.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think he had a whole lot of time. I don't think his receivers created enough separation. Like, they called 30 pass plays. I was with Fleck on Monday. Now, Max tucked and ran on some of them, but they did call 30 pass plays, which for them, like, that's a new phenomenon. You're not oftentimes calling 30 pass plays in a close game. So that was a step forward. But I need to see more of what I saw on that last drive.
Sure.
Dukes, last thing for you here. So just to sum it up, behind the scenes, Royce Lewis has not been thrilled about the idea of moving positions, second base namely. And now publicly he has expressed displeasure, quotes all over the Star Tribune and The Athletic from Tampa. But the Twins are saying, and I think rightfully so, dude, based on Correa coming back at some point and Brooks Lee, we kind of need you to start thinking about second base. So they throw him in the 6th inning a couple games ago. Royce feels like he has not been prepared to do this during the middle of a playoff run. So there's some public clashing between franchise player and organization here about him playing second base. Your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I think it was the right move on Sunday. Like, if the alternative was Kyle Farmer enters the game, Uncle Mercy. Yes, Royce Lewis to second base. Declan, you would know this better than I, but Royce has taken a number of pregame reps at second base. Now, we're not talking thousands, but enough. We're putting him in the 6th inning, the scenario unfolding like it did on Sunday. Yes, I have no problem if we see that again. And hey, we all love Royce. Big fan, by the way, of SKOR North. The beauty of Royce is, yes, he can express his frustration, but he's still going to do as he's told. He's not going to be a prima donna. He's not going to argue necessarily. He might put up a case with Rocco saying, I don't know if I really want to do this, but when Rocco says, hey, this is what's best for the team, I have no doubt in my mind that in the end, Royce will do as Rocco says.
Rocco also made it abundantly clear on Sunday that Royce Lewis will be back at second again at times. Not full-time. He said he'll play plenty of third, but this is not done. Like, we are not. And I do sense that there is a definite butting of the heads here.
Sure.
I don't know exactly how it's unfolding, but Baldelli was very, very certain in saying this was not a one-shot thing. He will be back at second this season at times.
Yeah, well, heck, we could even have the conversation about 2025. Like, is Brooks Lee better long-term at third base?
I think he's.
You move Royce.
I think he comes back in spring training as a second baseman.
Yeah, wouldn't shock me. And yes, on the butting of heads. But I just think there are a lot of tough conversations that maybe we don't always hear about behind the scenes. Okay, this one we are hearing about. Again, right? Mike Zimmer's candor, Royce Lewis's candor. I love it, right? But I just don't think in the end, like, this is going to be some sort of big distraction. If that makes sense. If I'm laying that out properly.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Royce just doesn't have that in his DNA
Yeah.
to do that. But Royce is willing to voice his opinion in Rocco's office saying, hey, like, I don't agree with this. But hey, in the end, if it can help the team, and I'll tell you what, if you really lay it out to Royce and say, hey, did it make sense for you to come out of the game on Sunday for Kyle Farmer to enter the game, or did it make more sense for you to move to second base? Royce would say, okay, yes, I get it. I had to move to second base.
Interesting, man.
Staying for Farmer.
Dude, we do have to run
No,
here.
I like Kyle. He's fine. I'm just saying. When those are the two choices,
I got you.
Rocco absolutely made the right choice.
I got you.
Dukes, great stuff here, man. A loaded scoop session on this Tuesday.
You want a few more nuggets?
Couple for the road.
Yeah, nothing huge. But Cody Funderburk told things are going really well coming back from the oblique injury. He is feeling great. Set to go over to St. Paul tomorrow to throw live at-bat. So not quite the start of a rehab assignment, but Cody Funderburk will face live batters tomorrow pregame in St. Paul. Brent Hedrick, remember him, the lefty in the Twins organization? He will start pitching out of the bullpen for the St. Paul Saints starting tomorrow. And Trevor Richards outrighted. He will join the St. Paul Saints tomorrow as well. The Byron Buxton plan, play a full 9 innings tomorrow. Saints off today, played on Labor Day. So off today, resuming that series against the Iowa Cubs tomorrow in St. Paul. So the plan for Byron Buxton, play 9 innings tomorrow, Wednesday, then join the Twins in Kansas City, assuming all goes well, joining the Twins on Friday in Kansas City. That keeps them off the turf in Tampa. So you think about these turf games yesterday, today, tomorrow, Thursday in Tampa, the 4-game series. You keep Buxton off the turf. You have him join the team Friday in Kansas City.
Makes sense. Darren Doogie Wolfson from the 5 Eyewitness News Sports Department.
One more. Darius Taylor, we cited Gophers football. It's unfortunate that he's missed more games than he's played in. Special talent went on the field. But, you need to be on the field.
Yeah.
So he suffered a hamstring injury mid-August. I was told early Thursday, it was actually sometime after I joined you guys last Thursday. Otherwise, I would have told you for sure. Although we touched on why the line shifted. That Vegas always knows. So it wasn't a surprise that Darius Taylor didn't play last Thursday. But I was told another couple weeks going back to last week. So I guess it's hard for me to see him on the field against Rhode Island on Saturday. Nevada, the following Saturday, I think is in play. Let's see how the hamstring progresses. Certainly back by that Iowa game on September 21st.
Yeah. All right, Dukes. We'll do it again Thursday.
Okay, sounds good, boys. Take it easy.
There he is. It's a scoop session here, Minnesota Sports with Mackey and Judd. See you guys.
Oh, one more.
Wait.